Historical Icons. The Lives of Great Men, Volume 1. Napoleon Bonaparte. Part of the Thinking Library. Part 1, Origins. The island of Corsica stood between worlds. Its mountains rose sharply from the sea, its villages clung to rocky hillsides, and its people carried memories of conquest, resistance, and pride. It was here, in 1769, that Napoleon Bonaparte entered a world already shaped by conflict. Only months before his birth, France had taken control of Corsica from Genoa, leaving many islanders resentful of foreign rule. Napoleon was born into this atmosphere of uncertainty, where questions of identity, loyalty, and ambition filled the air. His family belonged to the minor nobility. They possessed status but little wealth. His father, Carlo Bonaparte, recognized that survival in the new political order required adaptation. Through connections and persistence, he secured opportunities for his children within the French system. Young Napoleon would become one of its beneficiaries. At the age of 9, he left Corsica for mainland France. The separation marked him deeply. He spoke French with a strong accent. His classmates mocked his background. He was often isolated, awkward, and withdrawn. Yet beneath the quiet exterior existed an intense inner world. While others sought acceptance, Napoleon buried himself in books. History fascinated him. So did mathematics, geography, and military theory. He admired great commanders and studied their victories with unusual focus. Military school offered structure and purpose. It rewarded discipline more than social charm. Napoleon excelled in subjects connected to warfare and logistics. He developed habits that would remain with him throughout life. Relentless study, extraordinary concentration, and the belief that preparation could overcome disadvantage. When his father died, the family's financial position deteriorated. Responsibility arrived early. Napoleon graduated as an artillery officer and entered service during a period when France itself stood on the edge of transformation. The old order was weakening. The monarchy faced growing unrest. Revolution approached. For ambitious young officers born outside the traditional centers of power, history was creating opportunities that had not existed before. Napoleon sensed it. He understood that the world around him was changing rapidly and that old barriers were beginning to crumble. A lonely Corsican outsider, armed with intelligence, discipline, and enormous ambition, watched the storm gathering over France and quietly prepared himself for the moment when destiny would call his name. Part 2, The Rise. The French Revolution shattered centuries of tradition. Kings lost authority. Aristocrats fled. Institutions collapsed. Across France, chaos and opportunity arrived together. For many, the period brought fear and uncertainty. For Napoleon Bonaparte, it opened doors that would have remained permanently closed under the old regime. The revolution desperately needed capable military leaders. France found itself surrounded by enemies. Monarchies across Europe feared revolutionary ideas and sought to crush them before they spread. Wars erupted on multiple fronts. The nation required officers who could think quickly, inspire soldiers, and deliver victories. Napoleon emerged at precisely the right moment. His first major opportunity came during the siege of Toulon in 1793. Royalist forces had seized the city and invited British support. Napoleon proposed a bold artillery strategy that targeted key positions controlling the harbor. The plan succeeded. The city fell. Suddenly, the young officer attracted national attention. Promotion followed. Then came danger. Political factions rose and fell with alarming speed. Allies disappeared overnight. During one period of upheaval, Napoleon found himself unemployed and uncertain about his future. Yet fortune returned when political leaders needed someone willing to defend the government from armed opponents in Paris. Napoleon acted decisively. Cannons were positioned. The uprising was crushed. the government survived. His reward was command of the army of Italy. Many considered the assignment insignificant. The army was poorly supplied, underpaid, and overlooked. Napoleon saw something different. He saw potential. Upon arrival, he transformed morale through speeches, discipline, and relentless energy. Soldiers who had expected little suddenly believed they could achieve greatness. Then victories began to arrive. One after another. Against larger and more experienced forces, Napoleon moved with astonishing speed. He divided enemy armies, struck unexpected targets, and exploited confusion before opponents could react. Campaigns became demonstrations of imagination as much as military skill. News of his successes spread throughout France. Citizens celebrated him. Politicians admired him. Soldiers idolized him. His victories generated wealth, territory, and national pride. More importantly, they created a powerful reputation. Napoleon was no longer merely a promising officer. He was becoming a symbol of possibility. The ambitious outsider from Corsica had transformed himself into France's most celebrated general. Yet military success was only the beginning. Behind every battlefield triumph grew a larger vision, one that extended far beyond command of armies and toward command of an entire nation. Part 3: Power and Expansion. Power rarely arrives all at once. It accumulates through opportunity, calculation, and timing. By the late 1790s, Napoleon possessed something more valuable than rank. He possessed influence. His victories had made him famous. His fame had made him politically dangerous. France remained unstable. Governments rose and fell. Corruption weakened public confidence. Many citizens longed for order after years of revolution and uncertainty. Napoleon recognized the mood. He also understood that military glory alone could not secure lasting authority. In 1799, he returned from Egypt and entered the center of political intrigue. Working alongside allies within the government, he helped organize a coup that overthrew the existing leadership. The operation was presented as a rescue of the Republic. In reality, it marked the beginning of a new era. Napoleon became first consul. The title sounded modest. The power was immense. He moved quickly to consolidate control. Administrative systems were reorganized. Financial institutions were strengthened. Roads, schools, and government structures were improved. He introduced the Napoleonic Code, a legal framework that influenced nations far beyond France. Many citizens welcomed the changes because they brought stability after years of disorder. Yet Napoleon's ambitions continued to grow. In 1804, he crowned himself Emperor of the French. The symbolism was unmistakable. The revolution had overthrown a king. Now a new ruler stood at the center of Europe. Unlike hereditary monarchs, Napoleon claimed that his authority rested upon achievement, talent, and national support. His armies expanded French influence across the continent. Kingdoms were reorganized. Borders were redrawn. Allies became dependents. Family members were placed on foreign thrones. At the heart of this expansion stood Napoleon's remarkable ability to inspire loyalty. Soldiers marched extraordinary distances and endured extreme hardship because they believed they served a leader destined for greatness. Europe watched with a mixture of admiration and alarm. Some saw a reformer spreading modern ideas. Others saw a conqueror threatening the balance of power. Both perceptions contained elements of truth. Each victory increased his confidence. Each success reinforced the belief that his judgment was superior to that of rivals. What began as ambition was evolving into certainty. And certainty, when combined with enormous power, often becomes one of history's most dangerous forces. Part 4: Peak Greatness. Snow covered the landscape near Austerlitz. The air was cold. Visibility shifted with the morning mist. Across the battlefield stood armies representing two of Europe's great powers. Many believed Napoleon faced overwhelming odds. Instead, he delivered one of the most celebrated victories in military history. The Battle of Austerlitz became the defining symbol of his greatness. He anticipated enemy movements with extraordinary precision. Weaknesses were deliberately displayed to lure opponents into mistakes. When the moment arrived, French forces struck with devastating effect. Entire enemy formations collapsed. The victory reshaped Europe and elevated Napoleon's reputation to legendary status. This was the height of his power. His empire stretched across vast territories. His enemies feared him. His supporters admired him. His name became synonymous with military brilliance. Across Europe, governments adjusted their policies around the reality of Napoleon's influence. Diplomats negotiated carefully. Generals studied his campaigns. Citizens followed reports of his victories with fascination. Yet greatness extended beyond battlefields. His legal reforms continued to spread. Educational institutions were strengthened. Administrative systems became more efficient. Many of the structures he created outlived his empire and influenced future generations. Napoleon himself seemed unstoppable. He worked tirelessly. He required little sleep. He absorbed enormous amounts of information. Subordinates often struggled to match his pace. His ability to process military, political, and administrative matters simultaneously contributed to an image of near-superhuman competence. Success reinforced success. The more he achieved, the more people believed he could achieve anything. This belief became one of his greatest assets. It also became one of his greatest vulnerabilities. Leaders at the summit of power often encounter a dangerous illusion. Continuous success can blur the line between confidence and overconfidence. The judgment that once produced extraordinary victories gradually becomes less open to challenge. Around Napoleon, voices of caution grew quieter. Few wished to oppose a man who seemed incapable of failure. The emperor stood at the pinnacle of achievement. Wealth, authority, military dominance, and international influence surrounded him. From the perspective of many observers, he had accomplished the impossible. The outsider from Corsica had become the most powerful man in Europe. Yet history rarely allows any individual to remain at the summit forever. The same ambition that carried Napoleon upward would soon demand even greater victories, pushing him toward decisions that would test the limits of both his empire and himself. Part 5: The Inner Battle. The public saw confidence. The private reality was more complicated. Behind Napoleon's image of certainty existed a restless mind driven by extraordinary ambition. Achievement never seemed sufficient. Each victory created expectations for another. Each conquest revealed new territories beyond the horizon. This relentless drive fueled his success. It also became a source of internal conflict. Napoleon believed deeply in his own abilities. Years of triumph reinforced that belief. Again and again, he had succeeded where others predicted failure. Such experiences can strengthen judgment, but they can also weaken humility. The emperor increasingly trusted himself above all others. Advisors offered opinions. Generals provided warnings. Diplomats highlighted risks. Yet Napoleon often viewed hesitation as weakness. His confidence in his instincts became central to his leadership style. Many times, this confidence produced remarkable results. Occasionally, it encouraged dangerous assumptions. Another tension existed within his identity. Was he the defender of revolutionary ideals or the founder of a new dynasty? The question followed him throughout his reign. He promoted merit and opportunity while simultaneously concentrating power in his own hands. He spoke of progress while expanding imperial authority. He challenged old aristocracies yet created new forms of privilege. These contradictions reflected the complexity of both the man and the era. Personal relationships revealed additional struggles. His marriage to Josephine brought affection, companionship, and political advantages. Yet concerns about succession eventually led to divorce. The decision demonstrated a recurring pattern in Napoleon's life: personal emotions often yielded to strategic calculations. Power demanded sacrifices. Some were imposed by circumstances. Others were chosen. As the years passed, the burden of maintaining dominance increased. Coalitions formed against him. Resistance emerged across occupied territories. Every victory required greater effort than the last. Still, Napoleon pressed forward. Retreat felt unacceptable. Limitation felt intolerable. The possibility that he might have reached the natural boundaries of success seemed difficult to accept. This may have been the deepest battle of all. Not a struggle against rival armies. Not a conflict with foreign governments. But a confrontation with ambition itself. The qualities that had elevated Napoleon above his contemporaries, confidence, determination, boldness, and belief in destiny, were becoming increasingly difficult to separate from pride, impatience, and overreach. History often remembers the battles fought on maps. The most important battle, however, may have been the one unfolding within the emperor's own mind. Part 6: Decline and Downfall. The road to Moscow stretched endlessly eastward. In 1812, Napoleon launched one of the most ambitious military campaigns in history. Hundreds of thousands of soldiers advanced into Russia. The scale was immense. The risks were enormous. At first, the operation appeared consistent with previous successes. Napoleon had defeated powerful coalitions before. He expected another victory. Russia responded differently. Rather than offering a decisive confrontation, Russian forces retreated deeper into their territory. Villages were abandoned. Supplies were destroyed. Fields were burned. The invading army advanced farther and farther from reliable support. When Napoleon finally entered Moscow, the city offered little reward. Large sections were engulfed in flames. The expected political settlement never arrived. Winter approached. The retreat became a catastrophe. Cold, hunger, disease, and constant attacks devastated the army. What had entered Russia as one of the greatest military forces ever assembled returned as a shattered remnant. Europe took notice. The myth of invincibility had been broken. Enemies united. New coalitions emerged. Campaigns that once ended in triumph increasingly ended in exhaustion. Napoleon fought with characteristic determination, but the strategic landscape had changed. Resources diminished. Opposition strengthened. Years of warfare had generated widespread resistance to French domination. In 1814, Paris fell. Napoleon abdicated. He was exiled to the island of Elba. For many leaders, the story would have ended there. Not for Napoleon. He escaped. Returned to France. Reclaimed power. For one dramatic period known as the 100 Days, he attempted to rebuild what had been lost. The final act arrived at Waterloo in 1815. The battle has become one of history's most famous turning points. Facing determined opponents, Napoleon suffered defeat. This time there would be no return. He was sent to the remote island of St. Helena in the South Atlantic. Distance replaced power. Isolation replaced command. Reflection replaced ambition. The emperor who had once shaped the destiny of nations spent his remaining years far from the centers of influence he had dominated. His downfall was not caused by a single mistake. It emerged from accumulation. Expanding ambitions. Growing resistance. Strategic miscalculations. The limits of human endurance. The limits of power itself. The empire collapsed, and the man who once seemed larger than history discovered that even extraordinary leaders remain subject to its final judgment. Part 7, Legacy. Waves crashed against the shores of St. Helena. Far from Europe, Napoleon's life came to an end in 1821. Yet death did not end the debate surrounding his legacy. Few historical figures inspire such sharply different interpretations. To some, Napoleon was a military genius whose reforms modernized institutions and advanced ideas that shaped the modern world. To others, he was an ambitious conqueror whose wars brought suffering across an entire continent. Both images continue to endure. His influence reached far beyond the battlefield. The Napoleonic Code affected legal systems across multiple countries. Administrative reforms improved governance. Educational structures strengthened state institutions. Concepts related to merit, citizenship, and modern government spread through regions touched by his rule. Military leaders continue to study his campaigns. Political leaders continue to examine his rise. Students of history continue to analyze his decisions. What makes Napoleon especially fascinating is the combination of greatness and limitation contained within a single life. He demonstrated how intelligence, discipline, and determination can elevate an individual from obscurity to extraordinary power. He also demonstrated how success can create blind spots. How confidence can evolve into overconfidence. How ambition can expand beyond sustainable limits. His story is ultimately a study of human potential and human vulnerability. The same qualities that produced his greatest achievements contributed to his greatest failures. That tension gives his life enduring relevance. Generations later, people still walk the battlefields where he fought. They still read accounts of his campaigns. They still debate whether he should be remembered primarily as a liberator, a reformer, a strategist, or a conqueror. Perhaps the answer lies somewhere among all those identities. Napoleon Bonaparte transformed Europe, altered institutions, inspired followers, terrified rivals, and left marks upon history that remain visible centuries after his death. His empire vanished. His victories faded into memory. But the questions raised by his life continue to endure. For in the story of Napoleon Bonaparte lives a timeless reminder that the pursuit of greatness can elevate a person beyond imagination, yet the same ambition that builds an empire can also determine the limits of its survival.